So when you think dinosaur, what pops into your head? Probably these massive skeletons in a museum, right? T-Rex, Triceratops, a story that just ends, boom, in a fiery apocalypse 66 million years ago. But what if I told you that wasn't the end? Not even close. Let's get into this because the real story of the dinosaurs has this final chapter that, well, it's going to surprise you.
And that's the big question right there. What if they never really went extinct? I know, it sounds kind of crazy, but the science, the actual evidence, it all points to this conclusion it's just as fascinating as it is surprising. Their story didn't just end with a bang. It evolved.
Just think about it. For 165 million years, these creatures owned the planet. They were this incredible success story of evolution. And that whole epic saga, it leads directly, and I mean directly, to the world we live in right now.
All right, so to really get this surprising ending, we have to go way back to the very beginning. Let's jump in our time machine and see how this whole thing got started.
Okay, so this timeline here, it gives you the full scope of their reign, what we call the Mesozoic era. It all kicks off about 230 million years ago in the Triassic, rolls through the famous Jurassic period, and then wraps up at the end of the Cretaceous. It's just an almost unimaginable stretch of time. Yeah, just let that number sink in for a second. 165 million years. I mean, to put that into perspective, modern humans like us, we've only been around for, 300,000 years? The dinosaurs' reign was over 500 times longer than our entire existence. They weren't just some phase the planet went through. They were the mean event, for sure. And you know what? They started out pretty small. The world back then was a totally different place. All the continents were kind of smushed together into this one giant supercontinent called Pangaea. It was hot, it was dry, and the first dinosaurs were definitely not the giants we picture. They were these scrappy little survivors trying to make it in a world full of other reptiles. But from those humble, scrappy beginnings, they evolved into this absolutely breathtaking array of forms. They became true titans that ruled pretty much every corner of the globe. And their incredible diversity, you can pretty much break it down into three main groups. So first up, you've got the theropods. These are your two-legged carnivores, like the famous T-Rex. Then you have the sauropods. We're talking the absolute giants, like Argentinosaurus, the biggest land animals to ever walk the earth. And finally, the ornithischians, this really varied group of plant eaters with all kinds of amazing defenses, like our friend the Triceratops. And this comparison right here, it perfectly shows the evolutionary arms race that was going on. On one side, you've got an apex predator like T-Rex with jaws that could literally crush bone. And in the very same ecosystem, you have this massive herbivore, Triceratops, decked out with defensive horns and a huge frill, probably living in big herds for safety. Two totally different game plans for survival, coexisting in the same world. It's incredible. So the key takeaway here is that their success was no accident. They developed some really sophisticated survival strategies. I mean, they were forming herds for protection, evolving natural armor like the massive club on an ankylosaurus's tail. They were building nests and actually caring for their young. And now this is a big one for later. A lot of them evolved feathers. And not for flying, at least not at first, but for things like staying warm and for display. So for 165 million years, they dominated. They seemed totally invincible. And then a single day came that changed the world forever. We call it the KPG extinction event. About 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid
We're talking the size of a mountain, slammed into the planet right near modern-day Mexico. The impact was, well, it was catastrophic on a scale that's almost impossible for us to wrap our heads around.
That impact set off this deadly chain reaction. It instantly vaporized rock, throwing a colossal cloud of dust and debris up into the atmosphere that just enveloped the entire Earth. This cloud blocked out the sun, maybe for months, maybe even for years. And of course, with no sunlight, global temperatures plummeted, the plants all died off, and the entire food chain just collapsed from the bottom up. And the result? 75%. 3/4 of every single species on Earth, gone, wiped out. All of the non-avian dinosaurs, your Triceratops, your Argentinosaurus, your T-Rex, they were gone forever. It was like someone hit the planet's reset button. But as absolutely devastating as that was, it wasn't a total wipeout. See, in the ashes of that old world, a brand new story was just beginning. And this is where we find their living legacy. So who actually made it through all that? Well, it wasn't the giants. The survivors were small. Specifically, a group of small, feathered theropods. Think distant cousins of T-Rex and Velociraptor. They somehow managed to endure the apocalypse. Their small size meant they didn't need as much food. And those feathers, they probably helped them survive the insane cold. And how do we know all this? Well, meet Archaeopteryx. This fossil, from way back 150 million years ago, is honestly one of the most important fossils ever found. It's like a perfect snapshot of evolution in action, the crucial missing link between dinosaurs and the animals that would rise up from their ashes. Just look at this breakdown. Archaeopteryx has features that are clearly dinosaur, a jaw full of sharp teeth, clawed fingers still on its wings, and that long, bony tail. But at the same time, it has features that are distinctly bird-like, advanced feathers that were actually designed for flight, and a wishbone. The technical term is furcula, which is absolutely critical for how birds fly. It's the perfect hybrid. And the evidence? It doesn't stop there. We now know that tons of theropods had feathers. We found fossils that show they shared anatomy, like the hollow bones that make modern birds so incredibly light. And that wishbone, we find that in dinosaurs like Velociraptor too. So scientifically speaking, birds aren't just descended from dinosaurs. They are dinosaurs. This quote really just says it all perfectly. The epic 165 million year story of the dinosaurs didn't really end in fire and dust. It ended in flight. Their legacy is literally all around us, and every single bird we see, a constant reminder of how life can find a way to adapt, to survive, and to flourish, even through the worst disasters imaginable. So, the next time you see a pigeon on the street, or you hear a sparrow chirping outside your window, take a second and really look at it. Because you're not just looking at a bird, you're looking at a modern-day dinosaur, a tiny, feathered echo of the titans who once ruled the entire planet.
All right, welcome. Today we are diving into one of history's most incredibly designed creatures. This thing was a walking, living fortress that just dominated its landscape during the Age of Giants. We're talking, of course, about the magnificent Ankylosaurus.
So let's just jump right into the big question. This entire animal seems to be an answer to a single terrifying problem. If you share a world with predators like the Tyrannosaurus Rex, how on earth do you survive?
And wow, what an answer it was. We're not just talking about a creature with a few cool defensive tricks. No, its entire body, from its head all the way down to its tail, was this masterclass in biological engineering. It was designed for one thing and one thing only: total, uncompromising survival.
So where do you even start with something like this?
Well, you have to start with the most obvious feature, right? That incredible suit of armor. And this wasn't like a turtle's shell. It was something way more integrated, way more complex.
The secret ingredient to this armor is something called osteoderms. Now, these aren't just thick scales. You've got to think of them as individual plates of bone, literally grown inside the skin, all fitting together like a perfect mosaic of natural bony armor.
And the genius here is that this armor covered everything a predator would want to attack. The back, the neck, the hips, you name it. It created this nearly impenetrable shield. But because it was made of all these separate plates and not one giant shell, the Ankylosaurus could actually move around pretty well. You know, it was the best of both worlds. Incredible protection, but also mobility.
Okay, so the body's covered. But the fortification did not stop there. Let's zoom in on the head for a second, because the skull itself was basically a fortress.
Just take a look at this comparison. Most animal skulls, including other dinosaurs, are made up of lots of different bones connected at these little weak points called sutures. But the ankylosaur? Nope. Its skull bones were all fused together into one solid, thick block of bone. There were no weak points. It was, for all intents and purposes, a biological helmet.
And if you think that sounds extreme, get this. Paleontologists have actually found evidence that its eyelids, even its eyelids, were armored. They had these little bony shutters that could slide down over its eyes for protection. I mean, the level of detail in its defense system is just staggering. Absolutely nothing was left exposed. So, we've established the Ankylosaurus was this impregnable fortress. But, you know, when you're up against a super predator that just won't quit, sometimes the best defense is a really good offense. So now let's turn our attention to its tail.
Because think about it, just hiding in your shell, pure defense, that's kind of a losing game. A predator can always just wait you out. To really survive, to make a predator think twice before it even tries to attack you, you need a weapon. You need to be a credible threat. And what a weapon this was. It was so brilliantly constructed. It wasn't just some lump on the end of its tail. First, you had the handle, the back part of the tail, where the vertebrae were all fused together into this stiff, unbending rod for control. Then you had the engine, these enormous muscles anchored to the hips that gave it all that swinging power. And finally, you had the hammer, a massive, heavy knob of solid bone at the very tip, ready to deliver a devastating impact.
So just how devastating are we talking? Well, this chart really puts it into perspective. The force that tail club could generate wasn't just strong, it was absolutely cataclysmic. We were talking about an impact that goes way beyond what a sledgehammer could do, and it could be delivered with surprising speed and precision.
Yeah, scientists are pretty much all on the same page about its potential. This was a weapon that was fully capable of shattering the leg bones of its number one enemy, the T-Rex. A single, well-placed hit could cripple or maybe even kill the apex predator of the entire era. So you have to ask why? Why such an extreme design? The answer isn't just about the Ankylosaurus itself, it's about the world it lived in. This creature was basically forged in the fire of a high-stakes evolutionary arms race. It's a perfect example of co-evolution. It was this constant back and forth. For every advantage the predator developed, the prey had to come up with a counter. So T-Rex gets bigger and stronger, Ankylosaurus evolves to be lower to the ground and more stable. T-Rex develops a bone-crushing bite, Ankylosaurus perfects its impenetrable armor. T-Rex becomes the ultimate hunter, while Ankylosaurus becomes the ultimate defender.
And that's the crucial point here. The Ankylosaurus wasn't just some random collection of features. It was a perfectly integrated system of both defense and offense. It was a true masterpiece of natural selection, honed to absolute perfection for the world that it had to survive in.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? This creature was the perfect solution for its time and its place. It really makes you wonder, when you think about modern pressures, new environments, new kinds of predators, what incredible living fortresses might be evolving right now all around us? For 165 million years, an almost unimaginable length of time, they were the undisputed rulers of Earth. And then, poof, in what was basically the blink of an eye, geologically speaking, they were gone. So today, we're going to dive into the dinosaurs' incredible reign and try to piece together the story of their final catastrophic day.
165 million years. I mean, let's just try to wrap our heads around that. Our own species, Homo sapiens, we've been around for maybe 300,000 years. The dinosaurs' empire lasted over 500 times longer than all of human history combined. They weren't just some fleeting chapter in Earth's story. For eons, they were the story. So, that leads us to the ultimate cold case, the big mystery, right? How does a dynasty that successful, that dominant, that lasted for so incredibly long, just vanish? What could possibly be powerful enough to slam the door on a 165 million year reign?
To really get how it all ended, we have to understand the world they built first. This wasn't some static, boring planet. It was this dynamic, incredible world that the dinosaurs themselves helped shape over millions and millions of years. And with that much time on the clock, evolution just went wild. The word dinosaur doesn't just describe one kind of animal. It describes a whole world of creatures with this absolutely mind-boggling variety of shapes, sizes, and ways of life. And you can kind of break their world down into this fundamental split. On one side, you had the hunters, the famous apex predators like T-Rex and the quick, clever velociraptors. And on the other side, you had the plant eaters, from the tank-like Triceratops to the towering Brachiosaurus. This whole back and forth between predator and prey, that's what fueled their entire ecosystem for ages. And you know, it's easy to picture them as just mindless monsters, but the fossil record tells a totally different story. We have tons of evidence pointing to complex social lives. Many live together in herds for safety. We've even found huge nesting colonies for species like Maiasaura, whose name literally means good mother lizard, where they cared for their young. They were building communities, raising families, living really intricate lives.
But then, 66 million years ago, this vibrant world they'd spent eons building was faced with a threat it just could not handle. The clock on their incredible dynasty was about to run out, and it was going to happen shockingly fast.
Scientists have a name for this moment, the Cretaceous Paleogene Extinction Event, or, KP for short. It's one of the most important dividing lines in our planet's entire history. It's the moment the age of reptiles came to a crashing halt and a new age could begin.
So, what was the trigger? What caused it? For a long time, it was a huge mystery. But now, the evidence points overwhelmingly to one single, terrifying culprit. The prime suspect in the case of the missing dinosaurs wasn't from Earth at all. It came from the cold, dark void of deep space. 10 kilometers. Think about that. An asteroid roughly the size of Mount Everest hurtling through the solar system at an insane speed. An object that big, moving that fast, carries an amount of energy that is almost impossible for us to comprehend. And it was on a direct collision course with our planet. The impact itself was just the beginning. Just the first domino to fall. It slammed into what we now call Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, and it kicked off this horrifying cascade of disasters. You had mega tsunamis, continent-spanning wildfires, but the real killer was what happened next. Billions of tons of dust and superheated rock got blasted into the atmosphere, wrapping the entire planet in a dark shroud.
This impact winter made temperatures plummet. It blocked out the sun, and the global food chain just collapsed from the bottom up. But as absolutely devastating as that was, the asteroid, well, it wasn't acting alone. It turns out the Earth itself was already in turmoil, fighting its own battles from within.
Yeah, that's right. At the exact same geological moment that they were dealing with this unbelievable catastrophe from space, the dinosaurs were also facing a second massive threat erupting from right under their feet. So get this. It was a total 1-2 punch. On the other side of the planet, in what's now India, a huge region called the Deccan Traps was in the middle of one of the biggest volcanic eruptions in Earth's history. For thousands of years, lava was just pouring out, pumping insane amounts of climate-altering gases into the air. This was putting enormous stress on ecosystems all over the world before the asteroid even showed up.
It was the absolute perfect storm, a war on two fronts. The asteroid delivered the knockout blow, for sure, but the non-stop volcanic activity had already weakened the entire global ecosystem, making it impossible for it to recover. For the big, non-avian dinosaurs, this 1-2 punch was it was too much.
But the end of the dinosaurs wasn't the end of life on Earth. Not even close. You can think of it more like a hard reset, a catastrophic event that completely cleared the board and set the stage for a whole new cast of characters. So who actually made it through the apocalypse? Well, the giants were gone. Their huge bodies just needed a stable food chain that didn't exist anymore. But the little guys, they had a shot. Our tiny mammal ancestors could burrow and hide and survive on things like insects and roots. And incredibly, one line of dinosaurs did survive, the avian dinosaurs. We see their direct descendants every single day. We just call them birds.
So, the KPG extinction created this massive power vacuum. With the giant dinosaurs out of the picture, the world was suddenly wide open. The surviving mammals, who for millions of years had been living in the shadows, finally had their chance. They diversified, they grew, and eventually they gave rise to the world we know today.
So, it's kind of wild to think about it this way, but their total catastrophe was our golden opportunity. The death of their world literally made the birth of ours possible. It's this powerful reminder of how connected everything is on this planet, and it leaves us with one last really big question. After 165 million years, the dinosaurs' legacy was a world made new for us. So, what will be the legacy of our time here?